our studies. And just as a reminder, greetings to those who may be online, and also if you are visiting with us. Uh, we have been engaged in a weekly congregational reading, Bible reading, where every day of the week except for Saturday, or except for Sunday, pardon me, Monday through Saturday of each week, there are passages of scripture that we read, and then our Bible classes as well as our sermons are drawn from those readings. So if you have been able to keep up with that, and even if you haven't, and it's not too late to join the fray, but we just completed. So on Saturday, yesterday, we completed or should have completed um, the readings that would have taken us through um, week 28. Week 28. And so for the last 2 weeks, if you consider last week's reading or 2 weeks ago, and then the reading that we should have just completed, uh, at least where the book of Joshua is concerned, that should have taken us through the first 6 chapters of the book of Joshua. And there was other readings that go with it. Hebrews 11, Ephesians 6, there's some Psalms, there's some Proverbs. But if you kept up at least with it, then we should have been through Joshua 6. And if you haven't, you know what, you can jump in for week 29 this week and jump. So there's no point where you can't start. But what we're going to do this morning based on that is that we are going to continue our study, and we're just going to highlight some things from those, at least from Joshua chapters 1 through 5. We're going to highlight some things to sort of get us caught back up. I need a little assist from AV on the clicker. It won't. There we go. Thank you. All right. So just as a reminder, Moses, Joshua. I just want to remind us all that as far as I'm concerned, one way to think about the work of these two men who were called into service by God, they are two sides of the same coin. That's the way that I think about it. Two sides of the same coin. And this is what I mean by that. They each were called to provide leadership of the nation of Israel in two different ways, right? If you could think of volume one would be Moses leading the so-called Exodus stage. That is to say, the stage of the nation of Israel when they are called out of Egypt to head towards the promised land. And then Joshua picks up what I'm calling volume two. Volume two would be where he's leading the conquest stage. That is to say, the time when now it's time for the nation of Israel to now occupy the land that God has promised, the land of Canaan. So really, it's a one continued story, 2 volumes, if you will, with 2 different leaders. So I think it's useful to sort of think about this work in that way. I don't know why that happened twice. I also want to remind us of the journey. I'm going to make this map, bless you, I want to make this map just a little bit bigger. I want to remind us of from whence the nation of Israel was called. Their journey to the promised land started, of course, in Egypt. So that's the orange box there. And so Egypt is on the west side. And so they were headed towards that green triangle. If you recall, that's the promised land. They're headed eastward. And I want to remind you that the most direct route would seem to be just kind of this approximated line in red that I put on the screen. But I reminded us all that in Exodus chapter 13, God did not send them in the way of the Philistines. And the reason he did not do that is because there was war going on there. And God was concerned that if the nation of Israel, as they were fleeing Egypt, headed to the promised land, if they saw those wars going on, they would get scared and would want to go back to Egypt. So instead of sending them that more direct route, they took the route, or at least it's believed based on what the scripture tells us, that more circuitous or lengthy route, that south easterly route, where they would sort of track down, if you see there, track down the purple arrows until they get to that one point. Now they're at this oval, and that oval, they circled in that oval for how many years? How many? 40 years. And because of their disobedience, so even on this southeasterly route that they had to circle in that oval for 40 years because of their disobedience. And then God allowed them to pick back up and to continue north, headed to the promised land. So I wanted you to see this journey. One more thing we'll put up here on the screen. That pink dot that you see at the top there, that is approximately where Mount Nebo is. And what's significant about Mount Nebo is that that is the last place that God allowed Moses. Essentially, he ended his life at that point. That is as far as Moses got. God allowed him to go to the top of Mount Nebo and to look over into the promised land, but God did not allow him to cross over into the promised land. That is as far as Moses got, and that is essentially where Joshua picks up his leadership. So we talked also a good bit about this transition in leadership. So another thing that's important about the experiences of Moses and Joshua is that there was a transition in leadership. So last week in class, as we think about transition in leadership, I asked this man that you see up on the screen, I asked him a very important question. And I asked him to tell us his understanding of this concept that the business world often uses that is referred to as succession planning. When you think about transition in leadership, there's a concept that the business world often uses, this idea of succession planning. And here's a quote of what he said. I'm going to put it up on the screen. When I asked him what the business world said, this is David Galloway, by the way, our local theologian. I asked him, how does the business world regard this idea of succession planning? This is what he says, on the fly, by the way. He says, any organization that believes in the importance of having key leadership in given roles, they believe it is important that they don't let it meaning let the leadership continue by chance, but instead it continues by plan. So the plan involves developing the attributes in the new leader, he or she, man or woman, so that this new leader performs at the level that the organization needs. That is a quote. That's what he said last week. Right off the top, that's what he said. And he's exactly right. And so what I want to remind us of is that this notion of succession planning, it didn't start with the business world, it started with God. And so we see God's model of succession planning as it relates to the change in leadership from Moses to Joshua. And here, again, all of it's important. But the key thing that David shared is, again, it's this notion of succession planning when it's done correctly. It is not done by chance, but it's done by plan. And we see that principle play out in Joshua's divine development. When Moses died and there needed to be a new leader, the nation wasn't, well, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We got to draw straws. We got to launch an executive search. No, they didn't do any of that. Joshua was already being developed for this very moment prior to Moses' death. Here are some of the highlights from Joshua's divine development. First of all, before they got very far out of Egypt, he was called by Moses to lead the first battle against the Amalekites. Soon after leaving Egypt, we read about that in Exodus chapter 18. When Moses was up on the top of Mount Sinai receiving the 10 Commandments, guess who was up there with him? Joshua. When the Bible tells us in Exodus 33 that there was this tent outside of the Israelite camp, they called it the tent of meeting, where God would meet as if a man met face to face with another man. God would meet with Moses in that tent of meeting. Guess who was in that tent with him? Joshua. By the way, Joshua was one of the 12 spies who was sent out to spy out the land, but only 2 came back with a good report, the faithful report, both he and Caleb. Numbers 14, we read about that. Moses, by the way, did you know that Joshua's original name was Hoshea, which, believe it or not, it means deliverer, which is interesting. But Moses changed his name from Hoshea to Joshua, which means Jehovah saves. And we read about that in Numbers chapter 13. And all of that happened not by happenstance, not by coincidence, It happened based on, first of all, the wise foresight of Moses, who understood that there was going to be someone who would be needed to replace him. So he approached God and said, God, we need someone to lead your people. And based on the providence of God, we read about that in Numbers 20 as well as Numbers 27. We understand that this development was in place. And so long before Moses' term ended, there was already someone designated to take his place. This is all of you. Sound familiar? All right, let's keep going. So this is what we're going to try to accomplish. We have an ambitious agenda this morning. I'm hoping that we can look through the highlights of chapters 1 through 5. Our sermon this morning is going to be on chapter 5, and so we're not going to touch it. We're going to set Brandon up as he prepares to present us a powerful lesson later in our worship service from chapter 5. But we want to set him up by capturing some of the highlights in chapters 1 through 5 as we get ready for our worship service. I need 4 readers this morning. I need 4. Melissa says yes. Mark says yes. I need 2 more. 4. All right. So we got. Let me see. Melissa, Mark, Jerry said yes. Leslie, did I see your hand? And Leslie. All right. Here's how this is going to work, guys. So Melissa, you're number 1. Melissa, you will be all of chapter 1. But notice that your chapter 1 is broken up into 2 sections. I want you to read your first, we'll pause, and then we'll read your second and pause. Mark, you read the second one? You're all of chapter 2. Same bit. In tranches, I would, if you don't mind, Mark. Jerry, you are all of chapter 3. We're not going to read chapter 4. And then Leslie, you're all of chapter 5. Got it? All right. So let's get after it. Melissa, you're up. Joshua chapter 1, 1 through 9.
After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, just as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to the great sea, towards the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law that Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on all that is written in it. For then you will make your ways prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
Excellent. Should all sound familiar. This is the changing of the guard, and now Joshua is now officially being commissioned by God into his work. 3 times there's something that God says to him. 3 times that he says. What is it? Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. 3 times he emphasizes that point. Just a reminder for us again. I mean, be strong and courageous. We talked about this last week. God has promised for generations that he is going to give this land into the hand of his people. For generations, he makes this promise. And yet, with that promise, God says, listen, as you get ready to do this, you have to be strong and courageous, which seems to indicate that there's going to be some work for them to do along the way. The promise is still good, but God didn't say, I'm going to zap you from Egypt to the promised land. There's going to be some things along the way that they are going to encounter to help fulfill or in the midst of this promise being fulfilled. Let's keep going. I want you to pay attention now as they're getting ready to now with this transition. Listen to what Joshua and the instruction he gives in verses 10 through 16. Go ahead.
And Joshua commanded the officers of the people, pass through the midst of the camp and command the people. Prepare your provisions, And to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the word that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is providing you a place of rest, and will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock shall remain in the land that Moses gave you beyond the Jordan. But all the men of valor among you shall pass over, armed before your brothers, and shall help them, until the Lord gives rest to your brothers, as he has to you, and they also take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to the land of your possession and shall possess it. The land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan towards the sunrise. And they answered Joshua, all that you have commanded us, we will do.
All right, we'll stop there. 16?
I got most of it.
Yep. Oh, go ahead. Keep going. I'm sorry.
And wherever you send us, wherever you send us, we will go.
All right. So I want to make sure that this moment is somewhat important. So I'm gonna embellish it with what Melissa just read, because I want to make sure we're tracking with what's happening. Another map here. I want to make sure that we're tracking with what's happening. As this, I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. Joshua approached 3 tribes as they're getting ready. What were the 3 tribes that he approached to give some special instructions to? Reubenites is 1, Gadites was 2nd, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Now, it's important to me that we kind of follow this thing. Now, remember, so I'm going to point out a couple things on this map. First of all, that black vertical line, not just that spot, but the entire vertical line, that is the Jordan River. That is the Jordan River, and number 1. Number 2, we haven't read this yet, but in chapter 3, it's going to tell us that Joshua and the nation are in a city called Shittim, which is Shittim on the east of the Jordan or the west of the Jordan? It's Shittim, again, look where the Jordan River is. Shittim on the east or west side? East side. So the plan is for them to leave Shittim and go west, just across the Jordan River into that circle, Jericho. So they're in Shittim and they need to cross the Jordan River to the other side to get to the full promised land, starting out in Jericho. That's what he's getting them ready for. This is the piece that I don't want us to miss here. He approaches the Reubenites, you see my green stars, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And when he approaches them, he essentially says, Moses has given you all some land prior to this moment. And I think, and again, I left my first page of notes on, so I think that's reported in Numbers 32. I'm going off memory. I know it's in Numbers. I think it's in 32. Where God has already given those 3 tribes land on the east side of the Jordan. But when God gave them that land, prior to any formal crossing over, they had to make a commitment that even though they have that land now, they are going to have to be the first set of tribes to lead the charge crossing the Jordan. And the reason God swore them to that was because what he didn't want is for them to say, well, we got our land, you guys are on your own. He didn't want them to have that attitude. So he says, I'm going to give you that land. Does anyone remember why God gave those 3 tribes that land in advance? Does anyone remember the circumstance? What?
This was real good land.
Yes. Yes. The former shepherd spoke and it was so. Yes. That piece, that tract of land there, those 3 tribes had a lot of livestock, as Brother Keith has pointed out. And so they looked at that and said, hey, this would be great for us. And God says, okay, I'll go along with that. I'm going to give it to you now. But when it's time for us to conquest all of the land, you will have to be the first ones to go. Got it. So I want to make sure that we understood what was happening there. So now we have read all of chapter 1. Melissa, you did a great job. Mark, I think you're up, right? Chapter 2, is that you? All right. So let's start with the first 7 verses, please.
Then Joshua son of Nun secretly sent 2 spies to go over the land, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of the prophet stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent a message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken 2 men and hid them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the ford of Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut.
Excellent. All right. So again, I know we're familiar with this. We're just kind of refreshing ourselves once again. No different from the fact that they, when they were in the wilderness, and they sent out a spy detail, right, to do a little bit of reconnaissance. They're doing the same thing here. This time they send 2 individuals to do a little bit of reconnaissance to spy out the land. They encounter a woman who will become a very significant figure in biblical history. But in this moment, a woman, she's a harlot. And they go to take lodging there. And once again, just reiterating the point that God has promised the nation that he's going to give them this land, but it doesn't come without effort. They're spying out the land. They still need to know and make sure that they understand what the lay of the land is and strategy and so on and so forth. I want us just to keep that idea in mind. God has made all sorts of promises for us or to us. But it doesn't mean that we don't have an effort or a role in this life to play as those promises are being fulfilled. Mark, let's keep going. Pay attention to Rahab's response in verses 8 through 11.
Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given the land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of it. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water in the Red Sea when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven and on earth below.
All right, no trick questions here. Again, I just want to make sure we're paying attention even to the subtleties of the text. My question, class, is how did Rahab become aware of the experiences of Israel?
She heard.
One more time.
She heard.
She heard about it. She wasn't there. And the thing, there were 2 key things she heard about. She heard about the drying up of the Red Sea. She also heard about their battle victory. She was not there, but based on just the hearing, dare I say, of the truth of God, that prompted her by faith to respond the way she did to the Israelites. Somewhere I read that faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God. It's Romans 10. Hebrews 11 kind of shouts out Rahab because of her faith as well. I want us to compare that or perhaps contrast that. She simply heard about it and was convicted about the truth of God. Think about the Israelites who actually were part of the Red Sea crossing. They were there. They actually walked through dry land. They were there. They saw the walls of water. They were part of the battle victory. And think about what their faith was like once they got past those events. Complaining every 3rd minute on the journey, feeling like God brought them out there to ruin them. And they were there. They were eyewitnesses. Think about that. The faith of Rahab. Let's keep going. 12 through 21. What happens, Mark?
Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives have been assured. And you don't what we were doing, we will treat them kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So she let them down by the rope from the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. Now she had said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way." The men said to her, This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us, unless we enter the land. We have tied this scarlet cord in the windows with which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family into your house. For if anyone goes outside your house and into the street, his blood will be on his own head. We will not be responsible. As for anyone who is in the house with you, his blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from this oath you make us swear. Agreed, she replied. Let it be as you say. So she set them away and departed. As she tied the scarlet letter to the paper.
Perfect. Perfect. Again, I know we know this story. I just want to see how well we're paying attention. The Rahab cuts a deal with the spies. So somebody just what is the deal? What's the arrangement that she's made with them? What's the arrangement?
Take care of my family and I'll hide you guys.
Okay, I'll hide you if you take care of my family, not just me, but all of my family. So that Melissa gets us started with that. That is true. And so then how will that arrangement play out? They agree that they will take care of her family if she hides them. How then will she and her family get protected? What's the arrangement?
Stay in their boat and put the scarlet sign
I love that. Say that one more time. You said stay where?
in their boat.
Stay in their boat. They have to stay in the home, all of them together. And what else do they have to do?
Scarlet sign.
Okay.
Make their bubbles.
All right, and so we also have stay in their abode and put the term you use is the scarlet sign in the window. Now, what was the scarlet sign?
It was before the letter.
Amen, brother. Mark said it was a cord and not a letter. It was not the scarlet letter. That is true. It was a cord. And again, I don't want to overthink this, but does this conjure up any imagery for you? Staying in an abode marked by a scarlet sign. Does this conjure up anything for anyone?
Passover.
Say again?
Passover could be.
Passover. Same sort of principle, right? Right? There's destruction that's coming, and as long as you stay in an abode marked by not just any sign, but marked by a scarlet sign, in the Passover case, it would be the blood of the lamb, then you will be saved. Same sort of imagery, right? God is not random. He is not random. You took us through 21, right, Mark? Good deal. So we're going to cross those off the list. Jerry, is that you? All of chapter 3, please.
Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and he and all the sons of Israel set out from Shittim, came to the Jordan, and they lodged there before they crossed. At the end of 3 days, the officers went in the midst of the camp, and they commanded the people, saying, "When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, the Levitical priests carrying it, then you should set out from your place and go after it. However, there shall be between you and it a distance of about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you should go, for you have not passed this way before." Then Joshua said to the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." And Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, "Take up the ark of the covenant and cross over ahead of the people." So they took up the ark of the covenant and they went ahead of the people. Now the Lord said to Joshua, "This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you. You shall, moreover, command the priests who are carrying the ark of the covenant, saying, when you come to the edge of the waters of Jordan, shall stand still in Jordan. Then Joshua said to the sons of Israel, come here and hear the words of the Lord your God. Joshua said, by this you shall know that the living God is upon you, and that he will assuredly dispossess from before you the Canaanite, Hittite, Hivite, the Perizzite, and the Girgashite, the Amorite, and the Jebusite. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over ahead of Jordan. Now then, take for yourselves 12 men from the tribe of Israel, one man for each tribe. It shall come about when the soles of the feet of the priests carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, rest in the waters of the Jordan. The waters of the Jordan will be cut off, and the waters which are flowing down from above will stand in one heap. So when the people set out in their tents across the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark of the covenant before the people, and when those who carried the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests carrying the ark were dipped into the edge of the water, when the Jordan overflowed all its banks all the days of harvest. Waters which were flowing down from above stood and rose up in one heap, a great distance away, and out, considered as the side of Zerah. And those which were flowing down toward the sea, the Arabia, Salt Sea, were completely cut off. So the people crossed opposite Jericho, and the priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel crossed on dry ground, till all the nation had finished crossing the Jordan.
Excellent. Great job on that. Just a couple questions here. Just want to make sure we're tracking. I know that we've read these passages before. Number one, does this moment sound familiar? Yes or no? Sound familiar? This idea of tossing a body of water on dry land? Sound familiar? Yeah. This happened before in Israel's history, right? All right. Again, not a trick question. So what was the original circumstance? What was the body of water they crossed the first time on dry land? Red Sea. This time they're crossing another body of water. So as they leave Egypt, running for their lives, they cross a body of water on dry land by the miraculous hand of God. They do it again, miraculous hand of God, right? There are at least two things that are different here. The first is the bodies of water are different, right? But the second thing is same nation, different people. These aren't the same people who crossed the Red Sea, because what happened to them? Primarily, what happened to them? Died in the wilderness. So this is a new generation of people get it. So for some reason, and again, I don't want to hold this up here, but for some reason, God wanted this nation to have this experience of crossing a body of water by his hand on dry land, to the point that he made sure that all generations were able to experience some measure of it. Right? Same nation, different people who are now crossing here. Last thing I want to point out here, and I'm asking you, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul gives us, he gives us, or he enlightens us about this a New Testament significance to this Old Testament phenomenon of passing through the sea. In 1 Corinthians 10, does that ring a bell for you? What one might argue, based on what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10, remember we did a lot of study years ago about types and shadows in the Bible? One may argue that passing through water on dry land by the hand of God was typifying something that became revealed in the New Testament. What is it? Baptism. 1 Corinthians 10. Baptism. That experience of passing through water to be saved. Gaining access to salvation by passing through water typifies our salvation that we gain access to through the grace of God, through the blood of Jesus Christ, through baptism. Similarly, the experiences of Noah being saved through water as well also typifies baptism. We're doing really good. For the sake of time, we're not going to read chapter 4, not because it's not important, but because we only have about 8 minutes left in class, and I knew we would get to this point. But in chapter 4, what we learn in chapter 4 is after they successfully cross the Jordan with God's help, God memorializes that occasion for his people. He wants them to always remember that he brought them safely across Jordan. And what is the memorial? What does God require them to do to mark the occasion? What does he do? Or what does he tell them to do? I'm sorry.
Each tribe will set a stone in the middle of the river,
Yes.
and that is going to be a monument.
Okay. Each tribe was supposed to set 12 stones because there's 12 tribes. Each tribe was supposed to set a stone in the middle of the river as a memorial, and they were also supposed to set another one on the other side, actually on the other side, right? So very good. That's what we learned in chapter 4, and now we round this out in chapter 5 because again, this is going to tee up Brandon for his lesson this morning because his lesson's coming out of chapter 5. First 8 verses, please.
Now when all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until we had crossed over, their hearts melted, and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites. At that time the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibeah and Ramah. Now this is why he did so. All those who came out of Egypt, all the men of military age, died in the desert on the way after leaving Egypt. All the people that came out had been circumcised, but all the people born in the desert during the journey from Egypt had not. The Israelites had moved about in the desert for 40 years until all the men who were of military age when they left Egypt had died, since they had not obeyed the Lord. For the Lord had sworn to them that they would not see the land that he had solemnly promised their fathers to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he raised up their sons in their place, and these were the ones Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And after the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained where they were in camp until they were.
All right. We're doing great on time. Now, I'm about to ask you 2 questions. One of them, the answer is right here in the text. What Leslie just read, you can get the answer somewhere between verses 1 and 8. And then I want to ask you a second question where the answer is not provided at all. But I want you to I want you to ponder. So here's the first question where the answer is in the text. Why did the nation need to be circumcised now? Go ahead, Pop.
Because all the people 20 years ago died in the river.
Okay.
These are the children of those people.
Okay.
Which had not been circumcised.
Okay. So they had not been, so up to this point, and it's right, and thank you, it's right there. Up to this point, all of these individuals who were left, the people who were left in the wilderness wandering, and their children who were also, those who were born during those 40 years had not been circumcised up to this point. Now they cross over to the promised land, and now the first thing God says is, you need to be circumcised. Now, this is the question the answer isn't given, but I want you to think about it. I want you to consider this. That means that we have an entire generation of individuals who for 40 years or so had not been circumcised. In Genesis chapter 17, when God gave circumcision to Abraham, he made a pretty big deal about it. The way that you entered into covenant relationship with God started with that. And if you were circumcised, there were some privileges that you received. And if you weren't, God said that you would be cut off. So the question that I want to ask is, are there any implications here? Another way to say what I'm saying, technically speaking, for 40 years, God's people were not in covenant relationship with him. For 40 years. So what does that say about him? What does that say about them? For 40 years, they're not technically in covenant relationship with him, and he restores it technically once they cross over into the promised land. Is that valid? Does it mean anything to us? Is there anything to learn about that? What do you think? Because I promise you, I did not realize this until going back over and studying through this. Like I did not remember this fact. I did not. So all right. So, but what do you mean? You said he just gave them time. What do you mean by that?
To think about what he had promised. Really, what he had really done for them. Just let them know that he was God.
Okay. So Brother Michael, I see you, Brother John. So Brother Michael says that he gave them time. This was time for them to get to know him better, essentially what you're saying, and to recognize who he is. All right, Brother John Boozer, what do you think?
Well,
Okay.
They
They forgot. Say that one time. Interesting. All right. Interesting. And Tom is going to get us. But John Boozer says that God's people forgot who they were, you believe, and that they needed to be, I think the term you use is they needed to be re-educated. Is that right? Interesting. We got two names, well, three really. Leslie, Juanita, and then Pop. Go ahead.
To me, it's evidence of grace.
Evidence of his grace. And what do you mean by that?
When he was still protecting them, taking care of them, even though they were disobedient.
Yes.
It's about grace.
Okay. So he's a God of grace, and even though I'm repeating, I think what you said. So you think this gives us visibility into the mind of God in terms of his grace, because he still protected them, took care of them, and delivered on his promise for them to go into the promised land, even though for 40 years they were not technically in covenant relationship with him because no services. Very good. Juanita, what do you think?
The people who should have been circumcising their kids
Yes.
were the ones who came out of Egypt.
Yes.
They never trusted them. They
Yes.
never believed them. They never obeyed them.
Yes.
Why are we surprised they didn't circumcise them? So, like, they broke that covenant.
Yes.
They never really believed in that covenant.
Mm.
So he's making a new one with your kids, a fresh one with their kids, because Daniel doesn't circumcise himself. That was up to his parents.
Okay.
They didn't do it.
Got it.
But they didn't believe God on anything else either.
All right. All right. So you see this as part of another of their sort of failings in terms of their. All right, Pop, you'll be our last comment. We're going to dismiss. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pop.
I think we see God's grace playing out here based off of his sure promise.
Yes.
He promised them the promise.
Yes.
It had not been fulfilled yet. So through his grace,
Yes.
he allowed them to get to that point.
Yes.
So he didn't require them to be killed.
Yes. All right. All right. So Tom has got. I started there. We're going to close on this. So here's the question that I want you to ponder through this week. And again, Scripture doesn't tell us. And the question, there are lots of wild theories about it. All we know is that for 40 years they did not circumcise themselves. For 40 years in the wilderness. The Scripture doesn't tell us why they did not. But I want you to think about why it is you think that they didn't over those 40 years. And then what we didn't get into is that we also see that they also took the Passover for the first time in about 40 years as well. So I want you to think about why it is that they didn't take the Passover during those 40 years also. All right, we are dismissed, and thank you for your comments today. Thank you.